That, friends, is what you can find out about when you host an open mic. Thank you, Gabby, for sharing that with us. And that song is a perfect song when we look at what we inherit and the ideas we get about saying goodbye. I have just gotten back from a trip to California where I visited my niece and nephew who are very little. And reflecting on this talk, because I had the blessing of getting to go there for a 2-year-old's birthday party and write a sermon on death at the same time. And really, they're not that far apart, are they, birth and death? They're not that far apart. And in the reflections of the time, I was recognizing how educated we are, how programmed we are to think that goodbye is a bad thing. How many times do we get the message from the moment we're born throughout our lives until the moment we leave our bodies that goodbye is hard, that it's somehow a problem, and it's somehow a bad thing? We even sit there and milk it. Have you seen the milking it? Have you ever milked it? Have you ever milked it in front of anyone else? Have you ever taught anyone to milk it? Bye, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Right? What would it be like? What would it be like if we were born into a different culture, into a different consciousness, where we taught a different idea? Where we taught this idea that we were connected in every moment, that we were connected from the heart center, we were connected in the mind, and we were connected in consciousness. So goodbye was just a see you later. Just to see you later, no matter what. Because what we tend to do, what we tend to inherit, what we tend to educate our brothers and sisters, our beings on, is this idea that goodbye will end in this final goodbye. And we kind of gear up our whole lives for this final goodbye, of holding on, loving these moments, calling these moments of physical togetherness good, and calling the moments of invisible togetherness bad or sad, somehow less than. So is it true that when we're not in a physical form, is it true that the invisible realm is less good or less powerful or somehow less real than the visible realm? Is that true? No. Isn't it ironic then that we do that, right? That we have this experience of it because it only meets a few of the sensations. The physical form only meets the eyes, the touch, all these sensations. And we spend so much time gratifying and focusing on and satiating these physical sensations when they're in the human form that we forget to teach, we forget to develop all of the other forms of consciousness and all of the other forms of connection. Today's service is about unity on death. I use the word death because in unity we don't use the word death. What do we use? Transition. Let's say it together. We say that when someone has passed, they have made their transition into what? Transition into the next experience, into the next form, into what some of us call the unknown, what some of us call the great wonder. There are a lot of philosophies, a lot of ideas, and a lot of religious beliefs about what we transition into. But in unity, we call it transition because one thing is certain, we transition into a new form. But consciousness, just like energy, does not die. They say there's no opposite to life. Life simply is. If you think about that, you might be saying in your mind right now, well, no, the opposite to life is. Is that really true? What is the opposite to death? Birth. The opposite to death is birth. But life has no opposite. And if we want to get scientific about it, science verifies this, that energy can neither be created or it simply changes. That's right. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It simply changes form. Yet we spend so much time in this human condition, looking out these eyes, smelling with this nose, tasting with this mouth, feeling with this hand, that we somehow work ourselves from 0 to 80, 90, 100 into this trance of emotional suffering that validates or verifies this idea that when something is physically gone, it's gone. Now, certainly, anyone that has had someone transition knows it's an incredible experience, isn't it? It's an experience of pain, of suffering. It's one of the deepest human experiences because it defies everything the mind and everything craving wants to believe is true. Like, how could the world be so harsh and so hard to allow us such beautiful, amazing love and then take it away? And how can we go on loving if it can be taken away? I mean, what a risk. Do you recognize that that makes us some of the bravest souls alive? If you love anyone that is in a physical form, it makes you one of the bravest people alive. Because when we first love, it can lead to suffering. But beyond the suffering, there is a freedom, there is an emancipation, there is a connection when we have fully merged in love that goes beyond time and space. The Men of Unity are getting ready to have this golf tournament, and I have the blessing of having been here in school when Deward Boone was here with us in his physical body. And I remember him very well. He and Hutch and Art Zebley and all of those guys would hang out, and I would go to their meetings. I was their prayer chaplain when I was a student. And his energy is still here, is it not? His consciousness is still here, is it not? He lives, in fact, here in our minds, just like everyone that you love. Where do they live? They live in your mind and they live in your heart. Now imagine if, when we passed or when someone passed, if we didn't have to do that much reconstructing to get our emotions and our thoughts in line with the truth, the idea that life is eternal. It does not begin with birth and it does not end with death. It is existent. It goes on forever. Think of how we may change some of our relationships. Think of how we may change some of our interactions. As I was heading to California, I was heading out in tornado weather here, and my mother, who was in New York, was meeting me and heading out to California from some really intense New York weather. And we made jokes about whether or not, we're going to make it. And so we said, either way, I'll see you there. And then we made a little plan, like, how about purple lights if we can, spin around? Like, I'm not sure what we'll be able to do, but like, let's go for that one, let's try that one. And then she said, yeah, and then let's go get Indian food. But how might our relationships shift if we had a conscious connection with each of us that is beyond the body all of the time? Do you have anyone in your life that you love very deeply that you can know what they're thinking or know when they're calling? Have you had that experience? Raise your hand if you've had that experience that you can tell. Yeah. That is our God-given ability. Are we ready to transform our world, transform our consciousness by living not by what we're taught, but by what our intuitive selves know? What our bodies know, that beyond form we exist. Today is about what does unity teach about death and what does unity teach about transition. I keep saying the word death because when we were in our hospital chaplaincy training, whenever all the ministerial students from unity, because they came, the ministerial students from all over, right, all denominations to these hospitals for chaplaincy, but when the unity students came, they always made sure and they said, now listen, which one of you guys are the unity people? Now, let's be clear. When you go into a family's room to let them know that someone has passed, you may not say the words, they have made their transition. Right? Because people are in shock, and they'll want to hold on to anything except for that one word, right? So if they hear anything but that one word, there's hope that maybe they're still here, right? But in unity, we've become so accustomed to this beauteous idea of relanguaging our lives, relanguaging our minds, so that we practice this truth and we start integrating it with our education, integrating it with our beliefs and our emotions and our thought systems, so that these things are not traumatic, because no one gets a pass out of life, do they? No one gets a pass from suffering. No one gets a pass about love and how love hurts. Love hurts. But what happens is we do generate a special pass. We generate a special pass that takes all of that pain, and in a moment of pain and suffering, it is so immersed and so infused and so entwined with love and grace and beauty and truth that we don't even know what we feel. We don't even know what we feel, because we're just being present to the miracle, just being present to the majesty. So in the midst of the suffering, it's not all suffering. It's this suffering with absolute beauty, with undying gratitude, with an amazing sensation of what life is and what God is. So, death then is not the end. Death is not the last piece of life. And if you have ever heard a unity minister that is seasoned, that has been in unity throughout their lifetimes, you will hear, that's funny, lifetimes, that's a later part of the talk, just slipped in there. You will hear them speak when they speak. At a memorial service or a funeral, you will hear them speak with a conviction that is beyond this world, and their words will uplift you, and it will be difficult not to feel excited at the end of a memorial. Now, I'm not there yet, but I've seen it happen. When I was at Tom Lee's funeral here in this sanctuary, Reverend Phil Pearson gave the memorial, and I just listened to it and thought, that piece, what he just said, it just rolled off of his tongue like it was nothing. I called another friend at another time when a death happened, and it was another unity minister that is very versed, and I explained how I was feeling, and immediately this emergence that it is a graduation. They have graduated. Let's celebrate. They have graduated. So yes, this human condition, this physical self wants the physical body back. But can we celebrate the truth of what is beyond the veil of the physical form? Can we celebrate the celebration, the graduation, the next stage? Can we pray them up and know they continue, and know that we may not even know what they see or do not see? We know that when people are having end-of-life experiences, when they're holding on to their bodies and getting ready to release them, that sometimes people definitely have non-local experiences. Science is researching it right now. That things that would be impossible, it's impossible to know what happened in that surgery room. It's impossible to know what someone said. It's impossible to know what people down the hallway were doing, but they're researching it, trying to find out, how could it be possible? Where are we located? So in order to get into this realm of consciousness, we have to let go of any beliefs that we think we may have, anything that we've landed on from our childhood education, through our religion, through our culture, and go straight to source. Go straight to the heart center where we ask, show me what this is about. Show me about my form. There's a practice in Buddhism that's an intense practice where families and beings actually through meditation walk through their own death. They walk through their own death, and they walk through the death of each other and go through that attachment, craving, non-attachment to get to the place where they're living from beyond the form, but while we're still here. Are we ready to experience heaven consciousness while we're still here? And I thought to myself, do you ever think to yourself when you go to a memorial or a funeral, do you ever think, we should have done this right before they went? Seriously, people, really? Seriously. I have a cousin who at 27 committed suicide. And, you know, we had weddings and births and all this sort of thing, and we all had reasons why we could or couldn't go, and there were some cousins and some people at some and others at others. And the moment this happened, everyone got a plane ticket. Everyone had time, everyone had money, everyone had the willingness, and we were all there. And we made a pact because we were all there, and we decided in being there, how are we going to be here together? And we looked at, which all of us do when someone passes, we look at the spirit of the person who went, and we said, what would they have us do? How would they have us celebrate? How would they have us experience each other and experience them in this moment? And we got to some great ideas, being 27-year-old cousins. We got to some great ideas of having some bonding, making some emblems. But the whole time, the greatest sadness was that urging of why didn't we do this while we were all still here in physical form? Even though there was a strong knowing that there was an energy beyond. So we proceeded with the Irish wake and embraced the authenticity, embraced the fullness of the tears, the fullness of the intensity, and the fullness of the love. But we made a pact that day that if anyone was ever in a situation where they needed to call upon this pact, to please do it before we're out of physical form. To please do it, to raise your hand and just say, this is the call, and everyone drop everything and fly in. What are we here for? Why are we alive? I find it pretty amazing that we walk around and we have our tasks, we have our lists, we have our jobs, we have our bank accounts, we have our families, we have our stores, we have our... But we're all in bodies, and at some point we won't be in bodies. And we go around much of the time not talking about how very interesting it is, right? How very interesting it is to be in these bodies. I want to stop for a couple of points here because I get these questions in unity. Well, what does unity teach about? I mentioned that word, suicide, and that's a word for death. And in some spiritual practices, they teach that when that type of death occurs, that there's no hope, that there's a stopping place, that maybe negative things happen. In unity, we don't teach that. In unity, the beauty is that when you teach that life is eternal, you recognize that no matter what, getting out of this body or being in this body doesn't solve or correct anything. Consciousness goes on, it's eternal. That's why we develop heaven consciousness here on earth. That's why we teach that consciousness is the thing to focus on, the thing to develop, because everything else, every other material, even this very skin, will be gone. So does unity teach that because someone dies in a particular way, they are somehow not worthy of the absolute presence of love? No way. Love is existent. God is everywhere present, pressing through all of the time, active all of the time as absolute love, as the most nurturing womb of love that any of us could imagine beyond form. That's what unity teaches. I've gotten the question on what does unity teach about memorials and whether or not it's okay to be cremated or to be buried. Because in some religious systems, it's very important, is it not, to have your physical body? Because there's an idea that you take the body back. In unity, we teach again discernment. That there is nothing that is going to happen, that life is not going to be taken because of the presence of a body or not? Am I less me if I don't have this hand? Am I less me if I don't have this arm? Would we engage in that concept? Like really, if you really think about it. Because this is a similar thing. If I don't have my body, right? I'm not going to be me anymore. If I don't have this hand, am I me? If I don't have up to my elbow, am I me? This is kind of gross, but keep going and see how far you can go before you say, I'm still me. Does it seem a little cultural, a little mental to think that I'm still me as long as what? My head and my torso are here? Then I'm still me? You're getting to see how weird my mind is. This is what happens when you go to silent meditations and when you go to ministerial school and you start contemplating all these things. But really, where do I stop? And then when you do meditation practices, you start recognizing the non-local mind. And you recognize, I am not my emotions, I am not my thoughts, and I am not my body. And when we arrive at that place, the world transforms. When we arrive at that place, life transforms. And we recognize that the life force in me is the life force in you, that it is bursting and pressing through all people, and that no, dying to the physical self is not the end. It is a new start. It is a new beginning. And that's why in unity, we have a celebration of life. Now, I think we as a culture still have a long way to go to have a memorial service or a funeral service really meet the emotional and spiritual needs of the people. I think there's a lot of cultures that do it a lot better. When my cousin died, my aunt wailed, opened up and just wailed, threw herself down and wailed. And there was something so beautiful and so magnificent and so real and so authentic about that. And I thought to myself, thank you, God, this is happening right here, so real, so authentic, so we can all be here and be in this together. No holding back. No going behind curtains to process, but fully opening to the experience of being alive together. We're here to be preparing for this moment of eternal life, which is this moment all of the time, constantly happening forever. Do we believe that? Do we live like that in each moment? And can we reintegrate that teaching into our minds? There's a quote I love, with man's dying breath, he should be prepared to make a fresh start. With man's dying breath, he should be prepared to make a fresh start. If you would, raise your hand for me if you have presenced someone who has made their transition while they're making their transition. And raise your hand for me if you have presenced the birth of a baby. And raise your hand for me if you've presenced both. Something miraculously similar, isn't it? Life coming in, life going out. We midwife the life coming into a physical body, and we can midwife the life going out, graduating, elevating to the next experience. That is transformation, and that is extraordinary. Passing and death is as sacred as a baby coming onto this planet, coming into this world. Energy is not created or destroyed. Our souls do know what to do, and there is a high and holy intelligence directing the very life force in your body, in my body, in every single being. And it knows exactly how to do this, just like a mother's body knows how to birth a child. Matthew Henry said, "He whose head is in heaven need not fear to put his feet into the grave." In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus said, "If they say to you, where did you come from? Say to them, we came from the light." The place where the light came into being on its own accord and established itself and became manifest through their image. If they say to you, "Is it you?" say, "We are its children. We are the elect of the living Father." If they ask you, what is the sign of your Father in you? Say to them, it is movement and repose. His disciples said to him, when will the repose of the dead come about? And when will the new world come? He said to them, what you look forward to has already come, but you do not recognize it. I want to share with you a poem by James Dillett Freeman, Unity's poet, and invite you just to take a moment and allow someone, anyone, to come to mind. It may be someone who passed recently. It may be someone who passed a long time ago. But I invite you to know this blessing, this poem, for them, and to allow within your being a new structuring, a restructuring of this relationship. That if there has been, and if there still is pain and suffering, to say, sweet Spirit, reignite, restructure, and reform this relationship in the depths of my soul, that I may know this life is eternal, and that truth may bring me joy, may bring me peace, and may bring me light. And now for the words of James Dillett Freeman.
He has put on invisibility. Dear Lord, I cannot see, but this I know, although the road ascends and passes from my sight, that there be no night, that you will take her gently by the hand and lead him on along the road of life that never ends. And she will find it is not death but dawn. I do not doubt that you are there as here, and you will hold him near. Our life did not begin with birth. It is not of the earth. And this that we call death, it is no more than the opening and closing of a door. And in your house, how many rooms must be beyond this one where we rest momentarily? Dear Lord, I thank you for the faith that frees, the love that knows it cannot lose its own, the love that looking through the shadows sees that you and he and I are one.
I invite you to close your eyes and take a deep breath in as we prepare for meditation.
Travel on, great soul, carry on, wise one. May the light unfold as your story's told. You are here and there, your presence lives on everywhere. So we pause and we know with God you go. From the deep within, through the great beyond, we send a blessing out as we sing this song. For your love will always travel on. Oh, your light will always travel on. Yes, your grace will always travel on. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. What amazing love one soul can spread around. So lay your burdens down, there's angels all around. I can hear the sound, can you hear the sound? we can hear the sound of love going around. So travel on, great soul, carry on, wise one. May the light enfold as your story's told. You are here and there, your presence lives on everywhere. So we pause and we know with God you go.
Gently, as if in the hands of the mother, as in the gentle hands of a father, we connect with the inhale and the exhale of the breath, allowing a rhythm, a nourishing beat, a sweet blanket of love to absorb us into this moment. Sweet Spirit, be in me the wisdom and the knowing and the truth, that even though my eyes may see form, even though my heart and my mind falls in love with form, that life is beyond form, that each stage, each expression of life is ever more and even more beautiful than my mind could even imagine. Be in me the strength to live my life grounded and rooted in this knowing that life is consciousness, that love, absolute love, is so real that once it is born, it never dies. That it is within us, it goes before us, and it surrounds us. And sweet Spirit, I bless my beloved. I bless the one I love that is no longer in human form. And with all of my faculties and with all of my being, I open up to new and beautiful forms of communication and knowing, trusting that the invisible landscape of life is very much real, is magnificent, and that I am one with this life in consciousness, right here on earth and everywhere I go, as I acknowledge and honor in all beings the I am nature, that nature that was me before I came into this body, that nature that will continue after, that nature that is all of my loved ones who are in their freedom form. In gratitude for this freedom form, I allow a new peace to develop within me, a peace that passes all understanding. Sweet Spirit, take my eyes, illuminate my mind, breathe me in the silence. So travel on, great soul, carry on, wise one. May the light enfold as your story's told. You are here and there, your presence lives on everywhere. So we pause and we know with God you go. And so it is. So friends, I ask us today, are we ready to live life from our spiritual knowing rather than our sense consciousness, and to begin to transform our culture, our families, ourselves, and our practice by these truths? So that when our day comes, whenever it is, rather than a crying goodbye, we will be saying, I'm coming. Would you say that with me together? I'm coming.